PC gaming, as you all know, can be a bit of a minefield, and if you're new to the scene, picking all those parts, getting your first build set up and built can be very, very daunting. So in this video, we're going to show you a low-cost gaming PC for less than the cost of a games console. As always, we're going to start with an overview of all the parts so you can see what it is we're actually building. Okay, so started off we have the Asrock A620M Pro RS with the Wi-Fi built in, and that's quite important for where this is actually going to end up once it's completely built and we finish testing it. Some of the features of this motherboard are obviously AM5. We're going with an AM5 Ryzen system with this, and we'll get to the CPU in a moment. Has two PCIe Gen 4 x 4 NVMe slots on it and one PCIe Gen 3. Also comes with Wi-Fi 6 on board, and as I just said, that's going to be very important for where this is going to be placed in the future. The all-important USB-C front panel connector, and comes with a pre-installed IO shield on the back, which just makes the build so much simpler to do. Just takes a little step away from your traditional, you have to put the IO shield on the case. This one has it built in, which is really nice. 7.1 audio, a plethora of USB ports and connectors on here, so you can plug anything you want into it basically. And if you haven't already guessed by the white case, it is actually a mostly white motherboard, so this will be perfect for a white build, for example. It's not going in a white build, but it's just the one we picked, so color doesn't matter, and you'll see why in a moment. We got hold of this motherboard from Amazon for £124. Moving on to storage, we went with, as you can see, the Samsung 990 EVO, not the Pro version. That one was slightly more expensive and it was much faster, up to 7,500 megabytes per second. This one only goes up to 5,000 megabytes per second, but this one was considerably cheaper, £78 and 23 pence for 1 terabyte. For our RAM, we went with the Crucial Pro DDR5 Pro. This was £98.99 for 32 gigs of 6,000 mega transfers per second, and is compatible with Intel XMP 3.0 and AMD Expo, which is what we will be using. Now, we could have gone with faster RAM for sure. There are much faster RAMs out there, but we went with a slightly slower speed because we want that stability for where this PC is going to end up being. Now, because it is an AM5 socket and DDR5, we went with a Ryzen 5 8500G. Not one that I've seen much on YouTube about, so this will be interesting for those of you that are looking for a cheap 6-core 12-thread CPU with internal graphics. As stated on the box, it has a base of 3.5 gig, but with a boost of up to 5 gigahertz. It will be interesting to see if that 5 gig is a single core boost or a all-core boost, and we'll find out when we build it. This one cost us £129. Powering all this stuff, we don't need a stupidly large over-watted power supply for this particular build, because one, we're not putting a graphics card in it, it's an APU. It's fairly low powered. That CPU is actually a 65 watt CPU, so we don't need loads of power. So we've gone with a 600 watt Toughpower from Thermaltake. This is an 80 plus gold. Now, I'm aware that the standards for PSUs are changing soon, but this one is rated as 80 plus gold. And this one came in at £63 and 66 pence. Now, you may recognize this name. We did a build video with the IONZ, I forget the name of it, it had a handle on it. Go and check that one out. I'll put a link in the description down below and up here somewhere. This is another case by them because I was quite pleased with that quality case. The build itself was very, very simple. It was a nice little mini ATX build, as this one is also going to be. Now, this is the Silent Edition one, and we'll get it out and we'll have a proper look in a minute, but this has no Windows on it. It's going to end up being an office PC, so it's not actually going to be playing any games, but we're going to be testing that out because I want to see what the 8500G can do. That being said, this is the IONZ KZ-30M, and this one costs £39.95. So all those parts together come to £533 and 83 pence. And as said earlier, all the parts will be listed down in the description. Okay, so with all that out of the way, let's get on with the build montage. So here it is, the build is complete, and I must say it was actually really quick and easy to build into this case. Let's have a closer look. Okay, so starting off on the inside of the case, as you can see, it's been tidied as much as possible. We've got standard cables plugged in, front panel connectors, fan header connectors there, and another fan connected there as well. And we've got the ketchup and mustard cables. Unfortunately, because this power supply is not a fancy one, it's not even a semi-modular, it's well, everything is connected. So all the cables are completely hidden behind this bit here where the SSDs would normally go, but this doesn't have any SSDs. It has a NVMe built in, not built in, but one we've added to it. That's a 1 TB. As we showed you earlier, we've got the 8500G behind that standard cooler there, and that should do just fine for what we're going to be throwing at it today. We've got another couple of fans at the top there, and I've put slightly larger ones in there because they spin slower and will make less noise. These are just DC controlled, so it's just the 3-pin headers on these fans here. And I'm going to set these to a standard rate so that that's actually going to be blowing air in from this side rather than out. So the filter has been left on here, and then we've got the exhaust fan there, because where this is actually going to end up, it isn't going to get that hot, to be honest, but it does provide some airflow over the components, the memory, and all this kind of stuff in here, and it can be exhausted out the back. So you can see here, this is where the power supply is mounted in this case, very similar to the other IONZ case. So we've got the fan facing this way, and so that does mean that it's going to pull air into that and then exhaust it out of the top of the case, which is absolutely fine. That is perfect. So effectively, we've kind of got an exhaust fan there and an exhaust fan there. As I said, unfortunately, it's got ketchup and mustard cables for this power supply, but that's just the way the Toughpower one comes. It's not a modular or semi-modular power supply, and we've got all the cables hidden, as I just said, behind there, which you're not going to see because there is no glass on this case. On the back of the case, we've got the kettle lead connector, as I showed you earlier in the video. That's where that goes, and then there's a cable that reaches to the front to the power supply. Perfectly fine. 2 Wi-Fi connectors there for Wi-Fi AX for this particular motherboard, and then all the standard I/O connections there. 4 PCI slots, which we're not going to use, and then we've got where the exhaust fan is going to go there. Moving on to the side that is normally covered up by a side panel, and this one is no exception. So we don't need to be worrying about too much about the cable management in this side because you're not going to see it. So we've got it tied in basically there just to stop it from flapping around. And then these 2 loose cables here are late additions. These are the 2 fans that I just showed you in the top, so blowing air down into the chassis there. And there isn't really a lot of other things going on here. Most of the cables are actually tucked in under the bottom there for the USB front panel header connector, the fans there as well. Sorry, the USB is in the front there. So there isn't actually a lot of cabling to do in this build. It was really simple to do. Anyway, that is the build complete, and let's get on to the most important thing, and that's see how it plays games. Okay, so the first game we're going to try is, as you can see, Starfield. And this is the first time I've run this, so we're going to try it with the default settings that it recommends. Okay, in Starfield, you can see we're in space flying around a planet there, and as you can see at the moment, 45 FPS, there really isn't anything going on here, and our average is, again, 45 off instant frame rates, moving around as you'd expect it to as we're flying around at this moment in time. Our max frame rate is 47, we've only just gone into the game, so that will probably stay like that. I don't think it's going to get much higher. And our 1% lows are currently at 28. We've also got the frame time graph there now, and you can see it's all over the place, but it is holding steady. Oh, just as I said it was holding steady, it jumped up. About 60, about 16, was going between 15 to about 30, in the 30s there. Hopefully you can see that, milliseconds there, which isn't too bad. So let's face towards the planet itself and see how much that affects it. Now we are going to try and go onto the planet. We're quite far away at the moment. Okay, so we managed to get on the ground. It took a little while to figure out how I did that. And as I said, I haven't played it for quite a while. And we've got Our frame rate has changed, obviously being on the ground. There's a lot more for it to render and see, but we're not in a very built up area here, and it's dropped down to 32 there, instant FPS average of 32 actually. Our max frame rate 34 as we're moving around, and our 1% lows are currently 28. There's a few more things going on over here. Now let's just stand up here and just have a look at the stats quickly. As I said, there's not a lot going on here, not a lot of other people walking around. There is one other person walking around, but that's not really making that much difference that I can see. There we've got stable 32 FPS on our average. Our CPU is currently just under GPU, sorry. This is the GPU, the APU, within the CPU, and that's 66 degrees, hovering just below 70 degrees there, maxed out at 99%, as you can see there, and it's only using 55 watts on the GPU. Unfortunately, MSI Afterburner, for some reason, doesn't show anything for the CPU other than usage. We're only currently using about 16 gig out of our 32, so it's making full use of that fast RAM, that's for sure. So this is the Radeon software, and we can see there it's showing FPS, frame times as well, so that tallies up with what we're seeing in MSI Afterburner, so that's good at least. So we know we're getting accurate results there. Now, power consumption we've already seen, and we've got our GPU temperature here. It's fluctuating quite a bit. We had that in MSI Afterburner anyway, so that is all good. Now, only on this, we're firing a gun in the background. Even in this software here, it only shows the utilization of the GPU, not anything else, which is actually quite disappointing. I want to see some further stats there. Now let's take a quick look at the settings. These are the default settings. I have not changed these, so let's go and see what it considers is suitable for this system. Hopefully you can see it behind the text that's on the screen there. We're running at 1080, all the games will be at 1080 because I'm limited by the monitor that we're currently using. So all these games will be 1080, and to be honest, that's realistically where you want to be for this type of system if you were using it for games. Interestingly, it's showing as custom there, so literally everything is set to low, so I can't imagine there's going to be much difference. Yeah, everything is set to low, so even if we change the preset to low, as you can see, obviously everything is low. So let's go and have a look at what it is actually using. It is actually using FSR3 because this APU does support FSR3, so that is quite good. And it's turned it on by default. Upscaling FSR3. Frame generation is not enabled, so let's turn that on. Sharpening is set to nothing, so let's turn that up to 50. Normally 50 is a good compromise. And enable VRS is on, and depth of field is on, and that is pretty much it. So let's go back, assuming there's nothing to set. So it's enabling frame generation, so hopefully we're going to see, well, it's going to crash. That's what it's going to do. Okay, so the next game is actually hopefully going to be F123. We don't have F124 yet. But as you can see, it's loaded up in a window by default. That could be, again, a previous setting that we've used in a previous benchmark. So let's go ahead and make that bigger. Okay, so it looks like the resolution in this game has been set really, really low because the text has got even bigger now. So let's go in once we get in the game and check that out. So as you can see, we've now changed it to 1080p. So that is where we're going to be for all the games that we're showing you today. Now, moving down the settings there, we're at a maximum frame rate of 75 Hz because that is the maximum this does. So we're going to make sure VSync is off, which it is. VSync interval doesn't matter because VSync is off anyway. Mostly everything down here is off. We've got anti-aliasing set to TAA and fidelity effects. This is the settings that it has picked. I have not changed these other than the resolution. So let's go out of that and go into the graphics settings itself, and the preset is set to ultra low as we'd expect, but ray tracing quality is set to medium, strangely. Let's have a look and see what else it's done there. We've got weather effects, it's set to medium, and most things are off or low or ultra low. One thing I want to point out before we get in there, we are actually monitoring the wattage of the entire system. Now hopefully you can see it up here, it's a bit far away from the camera to see, and hopefully it's in view as well. We're currently at this point using less than 100 watts. In fact, less than 90 watts for the entire system playing this game, and that is pretty good. Oh, it's just peaked over 93 there. The GPU side of the CPU is actually pulling less than 60 watts at this moment in time. Again, as I said earlier, we can't monitor how much the CPU is actually using, which is a shame. Although this is set to low, it's running really good frames. It looks very, very smooth, as you can see. And honestly, doesn't look that bad. I dipped down there to 20, to 30. So let's get into the game. I should have got a controller. Yeah, let's just quickly go into the settings because I actually don't know what the controls are. Okay, so we've changed the control so I can actually drive this thing, and we've set it to auto gears. So there we go. So far, solid 60 FPS there. Oh, this is not going well. Don't ever play this game with a keyboard. Right, let's just enable the stats. So you can see the stats there. It's a bit of a mess, I know, but we'll do what we can. We'll just do a little bit of a lap here, just so we can see what kind of frame rate you can expect in this game at low setting, at very low in some cases, or ultra low. I'm actually pretty impressed so far. It's very, very smooth. And to be honest, for games like this, smoothness, I'm catching up with them. How is that possible? Smoothness is far more important than really. Oh. Okay. Yeah, I think we might need a new race strategy. You're right. I'm surprised I didn't get disqualified. So even playing this, we are now up to about 96 watts in total, but that's the entire system, and maxed out at almost the maximum. Oh God, I've lost a wheel. It's very hard to play this game when you're trying to do a video. Almost at our maximum for the CPU. It's only a 65 watt CPU, don't forget. 65 watts, really, really low power. Frame rate's holding very, very consistent actually. Very consistent. 1% lower 39, nearly 40 in fact. And an average FPS of 62. Actually really, really impressed. So let's just pull over. I shouldn't really do this in the race, and see what we can do to increase that quality without losing the FPS. So we're going to change the default graphics preset to medium. Yeah, I would say let's, the instant FPS is dropped down by nearly 10, not quite 10 FPS, but we found that with a lot of other games as well, is the default presets in games actually only seem to make about a 10 FPS difference in a lot of the games that we've tested over the years. Even at this, I would say that's fine. It does look a bit better, as you can see on the screen now. And our averages and our 1% low and our max, obviously that's not going to change. And our power usage hasn't really changed either. We're still hovering at 90, between 94 and 95 total system power usage. Yeah, I'm impressed. I really like that. Let's move on to the next game. Okay, moving on to one that we've not actually tried before. This is Battlefield. I mean, I've played it, but I haven't shown it on a video. This is Battlefield 2042, as you probably will recognize if you play this game. It's not one that I generally play that often. I still prefer, believe it or not, Battlefield 5. So let's go into the options before we go any further and check the settings. It's set the default to 1080p, which is exactly what we want. The refresh rate we're going to set to 75 because that is the refresh rate of this monitor. And everything else is as we've just loaded it. This is the first time I've loaded it. And let's go. So it's actually set it to auto, which has set most things to low, as you would expect. We've got dynamic resolution scale is off, so it'd be interesting to see what difference that makes in a moment. It's got feature frame rendering on and vertical sync on, so we are actually going to turn those off. So that does mean that we're going to see tearing on the screen, but we can turn that on in a bit. We just want to see the maximum that we can get at this moment in time. So you may already notice that the MSI Afterburner stats are not showing up on the screen, so we're going to have to rely on the ones on the right hand side that you can see there. But straight away you can see our GPU is maxed out, as you would expect in this game, and the CPU is barely being used, to be honest. 5% on the CPU and 100% on the Radeon 7400M, which is what we've got in here. VRAM usage is also very high. It's only set to 4 gig. Now I'm pretty sure there's a way of changing that in the BIOS, and I haven't actually changed anything, to be fair with you, so it's set that, hopefully it's on auto. But don't forget the system has 32 gig of RAM in it, so it's probably set that to the maximum, but I will verify that in a bit. Anyway, let's see what the system is actually, or the game is actually like. So let's go in. Oh, I think we might have motion blur on. Please hold. Yes, motion blur set to 50%. Never, 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 never have that on, ever. I do not like motion blur. No, just no. Just many no's. Right, okay, I'm noticing a little bit of the mouse lag, or input lag, or whatever you want to call it. And I'm dead already. Inside this building, it looks like we're inside the building, yeah. We're getting, you can see on the right hand side there, we're getting 32. Now I'm assuming that's an average FPS. I don't actually know. I would think that's an average. Oh, I'm dead again. Maybe I could just walk around for a bit without getting shot. That would be great. Anyway, yeah, 34 FPS. Don't forget, we're on low settings. We haven't enabled any kind of frame generation, which tends to crash games, it seems, and or upscaling of any kind. So let's just try and hide somewhere. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to go in and change the dynamic resolution scale, and we're just going to leave it and see what it does. We'll leave it 100%, and we'll leave that all as it is, and see if that makes any difference whatsoever. Don't know if I've got to apply those settings. Oh, I can see already it's definitely reduced the... you can see it. You can definitely... Oh, hello. Thank you. That's very kind. You can definitely see it's reduced it. And I still can't aim when I'm trying to do a video. I still can't aim when I'm not trying to do a video, let alone when I'm trying to do one. And you can definitely see in the distance over there, everything is really, really draggy. So I'd imagine it's reduced it down to possibly 720p. I don't know. But we are getting a solid 60 FPS there. I think that's probably the target that it set itself to do. But it's super smooth, albeit at a visual quality loss there. So what we're going to do is scroll back down, and we're going to change the target to 50%, and we're going to see what that does. So our FPS has dropped a little bit, but our visual quality, again dead, is not bad actually. It's much better than it was before, so I don't know what resolution it's put it in. I don't think it tells us that, but our FPS is a little bit higher than we were getting with no dynamic scaling enabled. So we have increased our FPS by using that feature of this game. Okay, so I've gone in and changed the ray tracing setting, and it's made it considerably worse. So you can see on the screen, it's actually not a smooth experience. It's gone back down to 30 FPS. I'm going to get shot again because I'm not actually playing the game properly. But you can see there, it's very, very juddery, down to 9 FPS now. Okay, so what we've gone and done is turn off ray tracing. And I don't really notice that much different. In fact, I think maybe the FPS has gone up, but I am dead. So I'm thinking actually we just leave it, potentially leave the future frame rendering on. I would say leave that on. So let's go back. Yeah, definitely worth having that enabled. The graphic settings are set to auto, so I'm seeing that dynamically change as we're moving around. It's got fuzzy again, but our FPS is holding stable. But if you're not too worried about that kind of visual quality difference happening while you're playing the game, then having it set to auto is probably a good option, because then it will keep those consistent frame rates that you're after. But what would happen if we were actually going to manually set those? So let's take it out of auto, if it will let us do that. No, that's the wrong one. Let's set it to medium. Still not looking amazingly better than what it was a moment ago. Still very fuzzy in the distance. But when you do that, it's absolutely fine. You can still get those shots. A little bit tearing as we're moving around. As I already said, VSync is off right now. Consistent 40 FPS there. And yeah, the mouse lag doesn't seem to be that much. Doesn't seem to be noticeable too much in this game right now. As I said, we're indoors. So I'm going to try and go out. Oh, the game has ended. So a normal style Conquest map here. We haven't changed the settings from what it was a moment ago. So let's go and see what it's like at one of these type of game modes. And again, very fuzzy in the distance there. We haven't changed any of that, although we are on the preset medium, but it's still quite fuzzy in the distance over there. So that is just the preset. Let's see if we can find a vehicle and just have a little drive around. So this mode reminds me more of Battlefield 5, to be honest with you. So that is nice to see. So it is possible I might get back into this game, see what it's like. Very, very fuzzy in the distance over there, but when we zoom in, obviously that's fine. I just want a vehicle to drive around in. How hard can it be to find one? I've just noticed watching power usage, it's now up to 99. I saw it peak up to about 100 there, so we're pushing more power, but still quite low compared to bigger systems with dedicated graphics cards, obviously it's going to pull less power than one of those type of systems. But given that this is running on an APU, it's not actually running that bad, to be honest with you. You just have to accept that you're going to have to run those games at 1080p. It looks like they might have done some optimizations to this game to make it actually not bad. So I might give this game another chance, you know. So let's change our graphics quality preset to high just because we can. And we've got the resolution scale to set to on. I think the minimum there is 25%. So let's try that, come out of that and see what that does to our FPS. Probably will tank the FPS, as I've just seen it drop now to 25, although it looks quite nice and definitely doesn't look as fuzzy in distance over there. We are taking a big hit on our FPS. So we are going to go in, scroll down the bottom again. It's annoying that these settings are down the bottom, and we're going to whack that up to 100% scale refresh rate target. Oh, hello. Can I get in there? Let me in. Oh, I'm in. Oh, I'm in the tank. Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So we managed to get in the tank. That's handy. Oh, before we get blown up. Let's get the hell out of here a minute. Quality, not great. I wish I'd upped the quality a little bit, or made it 50% instead of 100%, but very, very smooth. We're getting 40 FPS. It obviously can't reach the 75 hertz or FPS of the refresh rate of the monitor because it's just not fast enough for that. The GPU is already maxed out as it is, so it needs a more powerful APU or GPU to kind of do that. But at least you can play it at a very reasonable frame rate. I wouldn't run it at this setting. In fact, I'm just going to quickly turn that off before we move on to the next game, just to see how much the resolution scale tanks our FPS. And this is with no resolution scale on, obviously high fidelity as you would expect at 1080p as it can be. And our FPS has gone down to 21, so not an amazing frame rate. You wouldn't want to play it at that. So keep the dynamic resolution scale set to on and maybe change it to about 50%. 100% is probably a bit too much. It's going to reduce the resolution too much that you're going to lose that visual quality. But you will get good frame rates. So those are all the games that you've seen that this thing can play fairly well as long as you lower the settings in your chosen games. Now any older game is going to run perfectly fine at really, really high frame rates, or at least 60 FPS frame rates, but those slightly more demanding games you're going to have to go in and tweak the settings or change the default graphics settings to either a low or a medium depending on the game. Don't forget to enable FSR 2 or 3, whichever version that the game has, because that will give you a bit of a boost as well. It does support that. So overall then, I'm pretty impressed with this system. It costs about £533 for the entire kit, as you saw earlier in the video when we went through all the parts. And for a fairly cheap PC or low cost PC, it's done pretty well, I think. Now, as I said multiple times already, you wouldn't want to play this at 1440p. 1080p with this system is really where you would want to be. But anyway, hope you enjoyed our build and look at this system and showing you what a Ryzen 5 8500G can do, or at least partly do, fairly well. This system is actually going to be an office PC. It's quite sad to see it go and be an office PC when it can play games like that pretty well. But that is its final destination, and that is the end of this video.